you're hearing about what's happening in Philadelphia?
Well, what I make of it is that everything I know about big city Democratic machines and how they operate, and I come out of one, the city of Chicago, I know how they operate and what they do. Everything that I know about that tells me that there is, in all likelihood, if it's properly investigated, I think they're going to find vote fraud on a massive scale of historic proportions. And what's at stake here is far more important than whether one person remains president or not. It's about our democracy and whether or not we, the people, choose our own leaders in free elections. I believe, as that movie Field of Dreams said, that if you build it, they will come. When talking about a baseball field, I believe if they investigate this properly in all the different big cities involved, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, Las Vegas, perhaps even Phoenix, and certainly Atlanta, I think they're going to find legions of ballots that are fraudulent. And I think if I were a Trump supporter, and I would urge my fellow Democrats, men and women of goodwill all across America, that while today Joe Biden's been proclaimed the winner, I think all of us, every American, deserves a fair vote count, and we have to determine whether or not a lot of those ballots are legal or not. Count the legal ballots, disqualify the illegal ballots. My suspicion is, my instincts tell me from what I know in politics here in Chicago, is they're going to find boatloads of ballots that are illegal, and that may or may not change the outcome of this election. My instinct tells me it would.
You made it. We spoke yesterday as well, and you made some comments about just how corrupt these big cities are, these big blue cities are. And to me, it's just amazing to hear a comment like that from somebody who would know. You were a Democrat. You ran the state of Illinois. How does it happen? Is it just that it's so blue, and that you're only around your supporters, you're only around people that think like you, so they just kind of get corrupt because there's nobody there to give a check or of what you're doing?
Well, that's exactly right. Look at where the allegations of corruption are taking place. Every one of these places are controlled by the Democratic establishment. Democratic governors, Democratic mayors, Democratic Board of Election Commissioners. So the way it operates is they control the apparatus and they control the polling places, the places where people vote. And it's a very common practice that when their candidate is behind, what do? They shut down the voting and they regroup and wait until the dark of night when they begin the mischief. And that's certainly what we saw happen Tuesday night when President Trump was way ahead at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and now suddenly, after they stopped the count, things dramatically changed. So they do it that way. They kick out poll watchers. They make observers stand far away where they can't see anything. The Republican election judges in most of those polling places are really Democrats dressed up as Republicans, because no Republican wants to go into those places because it's frankly unfriendly to them. And they ballot harvest. And so I suspect what they're going to find should this continue, which I believe it will, and investigations continue, they're going to find a whole bunch of mail-in ballots that have been harvested by Democratic political operatives starting way back in the late summer, early fall, when those mail ballots began. So if I were Trump supporters all across America, don't give up. And again, all of us as American citizens ought to demand that these allegations are investigated, and let's see where they take us.
Does the idea of the mail-in ballot, does it make it easier for this kind of corruption to happen?
Absolutely. That's ripe for corruption. The old way was you did it with absentee ballots. That's what a lot of these political workers in big cities would do. I've run against some of these machines here in Chicago, and I know what it's like. I also have had the support of some of those machines. So has President Obama. Both of us come out of Chicago politics. He's from one side of town, I'm from the other side of town. And if he were asked honestly to swear on the Holy Bible whether or not he thinks vote fraud happens in big cities like Chicago and Philadelphia, he would have to. If he's true to God and to the good Lord, he would have to agree with me that it does. And it certainly has happened here. The question is, can you prove it? And is there enough of it to change this election? I believe, when they investigate it, that there will be enough.
That's just such a crazy thing to even think about. We're going to bring Mark back in. Rod, stay with us for just 1 second. What he's saying is just unbelievable to hear an accusation like that. You think you live in a country where your vote counts and where things are done well. We brag about being a first world country and having things done the right way.
Well, the governor's right about the history. The question is, did that happen here?
Yeah.
And the president's lawyers are going to have an opportunity to go to the co-equal branch of government, the judicial branch, and try to make their case. Hopefully, age of transparency and cell phone cameras and the internet and social media, if wrongdoing was done, it will be uncovered and the courts will order some sort of remedy. The trick for the president's team, though, is even if there's something uncovered that's wrong, what's the remedy? We're not going to have a redo of the election.
No.
So what do you do if you find that there's been some wrongdoing?
It's amazing. Rod, I just want to ask, I mean, you see, give me some of the stories that you've heard, specific stories you've heard. Maybe they're from Chicago, maybe they're from Philadelphia or another city. Any specifics you have?
But sure, the harvesting of absentee ballots, which is a small thing compared to these massive amounts of mail-in ballots. A lot of these precinct workers, the old timers would brag about how they would take these, they'd go out and collect them, and they'd get them from the elderly and from constituents who they've done a lot of services for, and they would pretty much get dozens of them, and then they would freeze them. They put them in a freezer in a way where they could open them up, and then maybe change whatever the vote might be, or make sure that the vote went the way they wanted, and then apparently you can close that envelope up and it doesn't look like anybody tampered with it. There were several people in Chicago back in the 1980s who went to prison for something like that. I can't believe that it's not happening today. Again, these numbers don't add up. Take a look at the statistical anomalies here. Why is it that President Trump did better in Florida than he did 4 years ago? Why is it he did better in Ohio than he did 4 years ago? Those are places where Republicans run the apparatus, and there don't appear to be allegations of wrongdoing. But why is it in those Democratic places and similar demographics in Ohio to Pennsylvania,
right,
Ohio to Michigan, Ohio to Wisconsin, why is it that the outcome is so dramatically different in those states? And then add to the fact that the president has reached a historic number of African-American votes. More black voters have voted for a Republican this time around, President Trump, than they did since 1960. Add to the fact that he raised his Latino vote from 30% to 39%. Add to the fact that a lot more of his supporters came out and voted. And then there's the anecdotal stuff from somebody like me, a Chicago Democrat. I can't tell you the number of Chicago Democrats I know, working people, who voted for President Trump. And he did better in Illinois, even when he wasn't even competing here, than he did 4 years ago. So to me, I think there's tremendous reason to investigate. My instinct tells me this has been a stolen election. They're stealing the presidency. President Trump is an incidental player in this. We, the people, the American people, that's who are the ones who must demand that we have a fair count. If it turns out Biden won that way, God bless him. But my suspicion is that if there is a fair count and you look into these allegations, you're going to find them. And I believe the vote totals will be changed. And I think those dirty votes ought to be disqualified. And only the real votes should be counted. And that should be how we determine who the president of the United States is.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff, information there from Democrat and former Illinois Governor Rod